Doncaster is the host for round one of the Minibike British Championship, the first of 10 events up and down the country in the 2017 series and the furthest trip north this campaign. It's one of the longest and most demanding courses of the season at the FatCat Moto Parc, where extensive preparation has gone in to ensure the best possible action in the competitive Pro Championship, where the national rankings will be decided. But before we get underway with the first of 3 motos in the elite class, here's a look at what happened in the other classes during the day. Alongside national championships in the professional classes, the Minibike British Championship also acts as a ladder for youth riders in the sport. Riders aged 6 and over can participate in the series, starting out in the 50cc category and graduating age 9 to 125cc machinery. With a high annual turnover of graduates from the kids class to the youth categories, it's perhaps no great surprise that we look set for a new champion in 2017. An immaculate day in Doncaster gave the points lead to Harry Lee, who had top qualifying by over 2 seconds. He looked set to be chased by Dayton Thompson, who finished 10th in the table last year, but proved his closest challenger at the opening round. The third moto in particular produced a close fight, Thompson leading into the final lap, but Harry Lee producing a new fastest lap of the race and finding a way past to take the checkered flag. With identical results in the top 5 positions in all 3 races, the championship pecking order was quickly established on the opening day of the season. But after a strong third moto, Dayton Thompson rounded out the day optimistic of gaining further ground on the leader. The points in the kids 50cc category after round 1. Harry Lee unbeaten on 75, 3 second places for Dayton Thompson to score 66, and 3 third positions for Ben Johnston, netting him 60 points. This season, the Youth 125cc class is split into 2 separate championships for riders aged 9 to 11 and 12 to 14, with effectively 2 grids in the same race lineup. And several of the competitors from the younger age group were able to mix it with the senior riders at the opening round of the 2017 season, most notably Senna Ace Summers, who secured 3 top 3 finishes in the scratch races and was unbeaten in class. His nearest rival in the 9 to 11 age group was Harry Streeter, who secured an excellent 3rd position in the first moto after holding off the attack of Leo Voles in a close finish. Streeter dropped back during the day. A 4th and 7th position finished his remaining results and completed the opening round 13 points in arrears of Summers. Ewan Goddard suffered a disastrous first moto, but recovered well to 5th position and a valuable 2nd in class. And he took the checkered flag in the second moto, also moving tied alongside Louis Dutton in the 12 to 14 points in the process. A highly entertaining scrap between Goddard, Dutton and Summers saw the trio separated by less than a second at the finish. The top 2 in the older age group less than half a second apart in the closest youth race of the day. Louis Dutton in particular produced 3 entertaining rides, recovering from 5th to 1st in the opening moto, involved in the action again in the second moto with a pass on Senna Ace Summers to take 2nd, and his reward was to lead his class at the end of the opening round after 2 overtaking manoeuvres on the opening 2 laps in the third moto to take a 2nd race win and, crucially, a 2nd victory over Ewan Goddard. Senna Ace Summers already looks prepared for a step up to the 12 to 14 age group and was at least 20 seconds clear of his nearest rival in the 9 to 11 class in each of the 3 motos. The closer battle immediately started to develop over third, with 4 different riders making it up onto the podium at round 1. Just 2 points kept Alex Dutton from a place on the podium after a brilliant third moto, and 3 riders were separated by just 6 points in the battle for 2nd at the end of the day. Meanwhile, in the 12 to 14 age group, Louis Dutton and Ewan Goddard were separated by just 3 points after round 1, with a competitive battle further back for, in particular, 4th position. 2 scoring rides and a pair of 3rd position finishes for James Lee brought him to the edge of that contest in 9th on 29 points. With 2 victories in 3 races, Louis Dutton rounded out the opening day in front on 72 points, with Ewan Goddard 2nd on 69, and Leo Stokes the most consistent of the rest of the field to take 3rd. The first of the adult classes to take to the track was the 110cc category, one of 3 different capacity motorcycles ridden by riders aged 15 plus in the Minibike British Championship. It proved a highly competitive day's racing with a 23-rider lineup and markedly different results in each of the 3 motos. Neither of the top two at the end of the opening lap in the first moto even made it into the top three in the race. Such was the frantic nature of the on-track action. Lap 1 leader Harry Titterell was fast from the start in each of his appearances, but finished the day only 9th in the points. And it was brother Jack Titterell who eventually took the class lead after a runner-up position in the first moto. He actually managed to hit the front on lap 2 with successive passes on Oscar Stern and Jack Titterell, but a lap later Elliot Gardner completed a recovery from 6th to 1st, and he went on to victory from there. Gardner was the pace setter all day, topping the timesheets in practice and setting the fastest lap in each of his 3 appearances. But he could only convert one of those performances into a win, a mere 11th position finish in the second moto, leaving him out of the podium positions at round 1. Jack Titterell won the remaining 2 motos, a congested lead pack, meaning it took until lap 3 for him to get to the front in the second, but his third victory was far more straightforward. After a lap 2 pass on Craig Rose, Rose went on to a 3rd position finish, Piers Skinner coming through for his only top 5 finish of the day in 2nd. Titterell, meanwhile, was the only rider in the 110s to make the podium in each of the 3 races. Lloyd Pettit, his closest challenger, with a 3rd first time out and then a 2nd in the 3rd moto. In each ride, he was forced to work his way through the field after an underwhelming start, and that left him with too much work to do. He finished 4 seconds short of the winner in race 3. So a commanding advantage for Jack Titterell with just 3 drop points in 3 races and 2 victories to his name. An impressively competitive class saw 8 different riders really in contention. Elliot Gardner, the only rider to beat Titterell though, and he missed out on the day's podium. 3 riders were separated by just 3 points in the battle for 2nd and 3rd at the opening round of the championship. Consistency key for Lloyd Pettit and Craig Rose, who took to the podium behind Jack Titterell. The 140cc veterans and masters joined together to produce 3 entertaining scratch races at the opening round of the 2017 season. Ashley Gorman was the pace setter throughout the day, although he didn't have it all his own way, even after topping the timesheets in practice with a 0.7 of a second advantage. Gorman took the first moto, but by just 2 seconds ahead of Lee Mitchell after a last lap pass, the top performer in the masters class also setting the fastest lap of the race. Gorman remained unbeaten during the day, but his closest rival in class, Taylor Hampshire, gradually closed the gap from the first moto to the 3rd, and would aim to renew the rivalry at round 2. Masters riders Lee Mitchell and Dale Howard were among 3 competitors to get the better of Hampshire in the 3 races during the day, and they shared the top points in their class, with a mere 3-point advantage between them after the opening round. Mitchell took runner-up positions behind Ashley Gorman in the 1st and 3rd motos and actually held the lead of the 2nd until a late race collapse that saw him drop to 4th on track. That result was still enough for 2nd in class, and the final result was a 2-1 scoreline in Masters class race wins over Dale Howard. So a gap emerged behind Ashley Gorman and Taylor Hampshire in the 140cc class, following their top 2 finishes in each of the first 3 motos of the season. 2 3rd position finishes for Luke Humphrey left him 3rd and already 17 points adrift of the leader. Only 3 riders between the ages of 35 and 44 were eligible as masters at the opening round, but they still provided an interesting fight between Lee Mitchell and Dale Howard, who traded places in each of the 3 motos at round 1. And in the veteran category, Christopher Rose opened a 19-point lead over a 3-way fight for 2nd that saw 3 riders separated by just 5 points. After a 6th position finish in the 3rd moto, Russell Mason dropped back to 4th in that contest. The B division of the expert class was one of the most closely fought categories and certainly the busiest, with a 40-rider lineup fighting for 3 qualification positions to race in the pro category at round 2. Ashley Arrowsmith was the top performer, setting fastest laps in all 3 motos and recording 2 2nd places and a victory to earn his place among the elite. His runner-up position in the first moto took an extreme force of will, working his way through from outside the top 10 and finally claiming the place on the final lap. In fact, he was running over 2 seconds a lap faster than the leader Sean Mason, who held on at the checkered flag by little more than a second. Mason was also the leader in the 2nd moto until a mid-race retirement that cost him a chance of running with the pros at round 2. And it was Ashley Arrowsmith who took advantage for his sole victory. Jack Hodgkinson came in behind him to secure a 2nd of 3 podium finishes to progress, and Nathan Howard recovered well from 5th at one stage to 3rd. Howard was again the rider to watch in the third moto as he cuts his way through the field to fifth. The remainder of the top position settling down in the early stages of the race. Howard's crucial overtakes gave him the final spot with the pros for round 2 by just 2 points over Robert Johnson, who finished directly ahead of him in the third moto. Separate battles down the order deciding expert ranking before the division of the classes from round 2, but the top 3 positions took the focus and the places among the pro riders for the second day of the 2017 competition. Sean Mason, the only unlucky rider missing after his second ride disappointment. The opening race of the 2017 Minibike British Championship has been set up very nicely by a close qualifying, with the top 3 from last year's series the top performers once again. The international trio of Sebastian Kjærgaard, Bradley Pocock and Frank van Homert almost 3 seconds clear of their nearest rival in qualifying, but there was little to choose between the 3 of them. Kjærgaard topped the standings by less than 2/100ths of a second from Bradley Pocock. Frank van Homert also within 1/10 of a second of top spot. A perfect appetizer to the first of 3 pro motos at the opening round of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. 32 riders then waiting for the gate to drop on the 2017 Minibike British Championship season. Away they go. 2 of the favourites away well, as is Blaine Blackwell on the outside. Not a great start really for Bradley Pocock, and it's about to get even worse as one of the top 3 qualifiers comes down on the inside of the first turn. Bradley Pocock goes to the back. The race now is for second. Blaine Blackwell having made an excellent start, but Dominic Foreman cutting through on the inside there for second. Frank van Homert making the break then, having got across the front of Sebastian Kjærgaard into the first turn. The Dane now in 4th position behind that fight between Blackwell and Foreman over second. Bradley Pocock has rejoined at the back of the group and will guarantee us some overtaking now. One of the pace setters in quali with a damage limitation exercise on his hands. Sebastian Kjærgaard also recovering. Snatches 3rd position there from Blaine Blackwell, who is relegated back to 4th. A 4th for James Cook from 13th, and that's going to put him right back into that trailing group, with Bradley Pocock moving through and already up to 23rd. Pocock having to work hard here in obviously slower traffic. He can't afford to get mixed up in their battles or to get held up too much either. On board with Pocock as he fights through into the top 20, and now on to the next group, certainly leaving himself a lot of work to do. He sense the race is still for second at present. The positions have stabilised since Kjærgaard passed Blackwell for 3rd, so van Homert leads. Kjærgaard chasing Foreman for 2nd. Blackwell an isolated 4th ahead of Jody Burton, and then a big pack from Andrew Luke 6th and down. Pocock cutting to the inside on the far corner to challenge for 18th now. Aggressively through to pass as they come over the tabletop, the highest point on the circuit. Pocock ripping through the field with ease. Obviously those overtakes will get progressively tougher as he works his way back towards the front. The big story of the opening lap then, Bradley Pocock ruining his race in the first 100 metres and now down in 16th position. Sebastian Kjærgaard on the march, really eating up the ground to Dominic Foreman in 2nd. He was already probing for a way past through the work section. Gorman has favoured the wide line on the bend so far, and that could present Kjærgaard an opportunity to make a block pass. They're side by side as they head towards the 60-foot tabletop. Kjærgaard clearly the faster of the two, but Foreman holding on obstinately, and that's allowing Frank van Homert to pull away. Side by side once again. Now Kjærgaard seems to be released around the outside and through. He'll have the momentum in the drag race back down. He's sprinting clear, but now can he reel in the leader? Frank van Homert, the reigning champion, already well in front. It's a familiar story. The Dutchman leading the way, the pro champion in each of the last 3 seasons, one of 2 overall winners in Doncaster in 2016. Further back this group from Joe Banks in 7th to Bradley Pocock in 15th. Pocock looking set to gain another place there with a fall for Dan Lee. So Bradley Pocock working his way through efficiently. 5 seconds the gap between 1st and 2nd. Pocock still an outside bet for a podium at this stage if he can keep up that pace. But surely there's no catching Frank van Homert after a brilliant early break. And this is a huge psychological advantage for the Dutchman. Still close for 2nd to 4th positions. Sebastian Kjærgaard leading Dominic Foreman. A sizable gap behind this group to Jody Burton 5th, Andrew Luke 6th. And then that group, Bradley Pocock is attempting to work his way through from 7th position down. So they come through to complete the first full lap then. It's Frank van Homet on the number 1 bike out in front and well clear already from Sebastian Kjærgaard of Denmark in second position. That was the main position change last lap around. Sebastian Kjærgaard getting the better of Dominic Foreman, who's already slipped back down to third position, is now under pressure from Blaine Blackwell. Meanwhile, Bradley Pocock coming down the home straight on the tail of Kevin Nielsen in 10th position and just breezing through. And Bradley Pocock making it look pretty easy on his recovery from right at the back of the field. He was already up to 16th place by the end of the opening stage, and now working his way through once again around the outside as we return to the onboard on Bradley Pocock, battling for position, reaching up to the high line to build up his momentum and then carry it past his rivals. Bradley Pocock riding superbly, and now he's up from last to 7th position, finally with a bit of clear air ahead of him as well. Great start to this 2017 season for Frank van Homet, who will be pleased to lead from the front and with a sizable advantage already over Sebastian Kjærgaard in second. That gap, though, does appear to have come down a little between the top two. The race far from over here. 4 seconds between Frank van Homet and Sebastian Kjærgaard at this stage, and then a bit of a gap behind them. Bradley Pocock 20 seconds crucially behind the leader, now coming up towards Andrew Luke in 6th position, so he's already up into the top 7, and Bradley Pocock's got a lot of work to do if he wants to reel in lost ground on the leaders. Here he comes up and around the outside of Andrew Luke, so through to gain another position, and Luke, who sat in 6th position early on, is now relegated down the order by Bradley Pocock, fighting his way through. But you can see the closest battle among the leaders is for 3rd position at the moment. Frank van Homet pulling away from Sebastian Kjærgaard in 2nd, and the Dane has a decent margin behind himself, a bit of a buffer to Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell, who at the moment are battling after the 3rd step on the podium for this opening moto of the weekend of this 2017 championship as well. And of course, it's the points combined over 3 races that will decide not only the championship order after this round number 1, but also the podium positions for the day here in Doncaster. At the moment, it's Frank van Homet looking set for the 25 points, race points and championship points as well, of course, points scored in every race during the season, so consistency is key. But at the moment, it's Frank van Homet doing it the easy way as he negotiates a back marker who seems to be suffering out on the track there with yellow flags waved while he sits stationary on the circuit. And Frank van Homet, you can see on board, he's making it look pretty easy, but it's far from it as Sebastian Kjærgaard tries to gain in ground from 2nd position. 3rd is still with Dominic Foreman on the 1-2-1, and Blaine Blackwell behind him in 4th position. That at the moment is the closest battle for 3rd and 4th places, but we're with the leader, Frank van Homet, who is riding comfortably clear of Sebastian Kjærgaard and surely can manage the gap from here. A lap since his last move, meanwhile, Bradley Pocock on the charge again, now with Jody Burton in his sights for 5th position as they come past the circuit's highest point, and Pocock then cuts back to the inside and through he goes. So Bradley Pocock, who's come from the back of the field, is now up into 5th position, and the next riders in his sights are that duo battling over 3rd place, Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell. And it's with Foreman at the moment, but it's Blackwell who has been gaining ground. Meanwhile, up front, Frank van Homet just managing that gap to Sebastian Kjærgaard as he negotiates the traffic, and the 2 international riders sit in positions 1 and 2. We're back on board with Bradley Pocock as he tries to gain in ground. He's quite comfortable running up to the outside, building up his momentum, as I said earlier, but from 20 seconds down on the leader and having lapped at very similar pace to the top 2 during the qualifying stage, it'll be hard for him to make it into the top 2 for the major haul of championship points, but certainly possible to mix it with the podium contenders here of Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman, who are tussling over 3rd place. Frank van Homet then working his way through. Each time Sebastian Kjærgaard clears a back marker, van Homet sending another one his way by cutting his way through. Obviously, van Homet has the tougher challenge of being the first rider to negotiate lap traffic, and by the time they see van Homet breezing around the outside, they will be aware that the leaders are coming through and might be a little bit more pliable when Sebastian Kjærgaard comes through from 2nd place. So that could be part of the reason why the Dane is seemingly able to gain in a little bit of the deficit to the Dutchman out in front, but van Homet looks untroubled for now. Sebastian Kjærgaard, having already made 1 pass in the early stages, has got it all on if he wants to get to Frank van Homet, who leads the way. The 2016 champion looking good for the opening victory of this 2017 campaign as we wait for Bradley Pocock further down the order to come through. And
just to see whether he's made any ground on the leaders. He's getting ever closer. That's a back marker. He's just coming through on the inside of there, up in 5th position, and trying at the moment to bridge the gap to the 2 riders ahead of him, Dominic Foreman and Blaine Blackwell, who are tussling over 3rd position. Further battles down the order, a race for 10th position at the moment between the 36 of Joe Banks and Kevin Nielsen, who's now tucked up right on his tail. So all sorts of pursuits going down right through to the fringes of the top 10. Kevin Nielsen gaining ground on Joe Banks, who sat as high as 7th in the early stages before dropping his way back through the field. Talking about dropping through the field, Dominic Foreman, who sat 2nd at the end of the opening lap, has now dropped behind Blaine Blackwell, who moves up into P3, so in line for a top 3 finish in this first moto of the 2017 season. And Foreman and Blackwell pretty evenly matched in this opening race of the campaign, but no such difficulty for Frank van Homet, who's heading towards his final lap now and well clear of Sebastian Kjærgaard. As they go into this final lap, it looks that barring any errors, it's going to be Frank van Homet who will take the first victory of the season, but the slightest of errors, and you can see that Sebastian Kjærgaard isn't too far behind him, the Dane in 2nd place. And further down the order, Bradley Pocock has managed to reel in now that group of Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman for 3rd and 4th positions while they've been fighting one another. Bradley Pocock setting fast lap times to reel those 2 in, so that's going to develop into a quite tasty battle in the closing stages here. But following the lead duo around as they come through the twisty infield section, and it's Frank van Homet well on his way towards victory, Sebastian Kjærgaard, who will have to settle for 2nd, and then a 3-way fight to find out who will take the 3rd step on the podium for this opening moto of the 2017 season. It's Van Homet well on his way towards victory, but Bradley Pocock within sight of the podium positions now. Blaine Blackwell 2 places up in 3rd, Dominic Foreman in 4th between them. Cutting through now to 4th position, Bradley Pocock with a block pass on the inside line and through. Now it's the race for the podium. Pocock reaches up higher. Going defensive is the number 71, Blaine Blackwell. Pocock looking to the inside to try and squeeze through. Oh, Pocock's gone down once again. Bradley Pocock down from 4th position. Blackwell will pull clear. Pocock drops down to 5th place. How quickly can he reboard that machine? What a disastrous opening moto of this 2017 season it's been for Bradley Pocock, one of the favourites for the title, but he's going to drop some severe margin here to Frank van Homet, who comes around the final 2 turns for the final time, and it's Frank van Homet who wins the opening round of the 2017 season. The opening race of the season goes the way of the Dutchman. 2nd over the line then Sebastian Kjærgaard of Denmark, and then it's a bit of a gap to 3rd and 4th positions, but in the end it's going to be Blaine Blackwell who holds on after defending well against both Dominic Foreman, who he had to pass in the early stages, and then in the latter stages holding off Bradley Pocock, who is now coming around to take the checkered flag, but only down in a disappointing 5th position. It's still a pretty impressive recovery considering how far back he was in the early stages after a fall that sent him right to the rear of the field, and the action there was seeing Pocock working his way back through to a top 5 finish. On to the 2nd of 3 pro motos at the opening round of the 2017 Minibike British Championship here in Doncaster. Reigning champion Frank van Homet once again tops the standings after his victory in the opening race, with Denmark's Sebastian Kjærgaard in 2nd. But it's Bradley Pocock who was the main focus of that first moto, finishing in 5th after 2 falls and coming from the back of the field. Watch out for the same 5 who made the break in their opening outing as we prepare to get underway with the 2nd moto. The gate drops and away they go. Kjærgaard and Blackwell are first away. Van Homet and Pocock neck and neck behind. Pocock trapped down on the inside as the pack runs around him. He drops down to 5th position, so it's Blaine Blackwell who leads. Frank van Homet in 2nd. Sebastian Kjærgaard 3rd. It's Dominic Foreman in 4th, and Bradley Pocock back up to 5th position. He was briefly swamped by the field. The race over the lead at the moment. It's Blaine Blackwell who got the whole shot, but it's Frank van Homet who now comes thundering through up the inside to take the race lead. Van Homet back in the leading position, as he was at the end of the completed first moto. And Andrew Luke is down. Luke, who had such a strong first moto, certainly relegated to the back, and for the moment still down on the track. Van Homet leading, as I was saying. Blaine Blackwell in second place. He's now under attack from Sebastian Kergar as Bradley Pocock passes Dominic Foreman for fourth position. That releases him to be able now to challenge for a top three space. It's Van Homet in front, Blackwell in second, Kergar in third, Pocock in fourth position. Once again, Bradley Pocock not away too well, and Frank Van Homet taking full advantage to lead the way. Pocock coming at him quickly though, on the inside and gaining ground on Sebastian Kergar, who currently sits in third position. The riders streaming through. Jody Burton sixth, Pat Crump seventh, Kevin Nielsen in eighth, Joe Banks and Craig Powell rounding out the top 10 as things stand, with Van Homet leading and starting to open up a bit of a margin now as Bradley Pocock cuts to the inside and tries to challenge Sebastian Kergar for third position. Kergar right on the tail himself of Blaine Blackwell, and that's all enabling Frank Van Homet to pull away out in front, to battle for second, third and fourth positions. In its fourth position where Bradley Pocock is driving forward. Here he goes up the inside into turn one as they come round to complete another lap. It's still Sebastian Kergar at the moment holding on. Pocock goes darting around the outside. He'll have the momentum and storms past Sebastian Kergar, and he might be able to take Blaine Blackwell for good measure here. Again comes soaring around the outside. So much of an overspeed that he comes flipping through and up into P2. It's Van Homet leading then. He's been enabled to open up a bit of a gap while Pocock was fighting his way through from fourth to second, but in successive bends, Bradley Pocock first picking off Denmark's Sebastian Kergar, the runner-up in the first moto, and then the rider who finished behind him in race number one, Blaine Blackwell, quickly succumbing as well. Far from an ideal start for Bradley Pocock, who, as I said, was in the second rank, if you like, with Blaine Blackwell and Frank Van Homet pulling well away out in front, and Sebastian Kergar tucked in with them as well. He ran wide, and that enabled Frank Van Homet to come through. Pocock was trapped really on the inside behind that group of riders, and he was swallowed up by the field, but managed to fight his way back through into fifth position before coming after Dominic Foreman, closing in on positions 2 and 3. And then coming past in successive turns. It was an outside move that got him through into second place, getting better of Blaine Blackwell. And things as they stand now, Frank Van Homet out in front, Bradley Pocock in second position, Blaine Blackwell relegated from second to third, and Sebastian Kergar down in fourth position at the moment. The only one of the top three from the opening moto sitting outside of the podium positions in the second moto. Well, Bradley Pocock has certainly continued to gain in ground on Frank Van Homet after successfully dispatching both Blaine Blackwell and Sebastian Kergar, and that's where the main race is at the moment. A separate battle and a separate pair behind, racing after third position as Pocock cuts to the inside here on Van Homet, who's running all the way around. Van Homet has the momentum for the moment, but Bradley Pocock, surely it's only a matter of time before he gets through into the lead, and it'll be the first time he's led in 2017, of course, having come through from the back of the field in the opening moto. This, the second race of 3 at round 1 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. It's currently led by Frank Van Homet, who is the series leader, albeit in the early stages of the campaign, of course, after the opening race of the season. He's under a lot of pressure here from Bradley Pocock. He lost a little bit of time over the tabletop further back round the circuit, but he seems to be gaining it all back in again. And Bradley Pocock here on the attack, right on the tail of Frank Van Homet, the leader. So it's the number 1 plate holder out in front. Pocock looking to the inside again as they come on to towards the infield section, and it's Bradley Pocock who is trying to gain ground on Van Homet, who runs narrow, runs defensive. Pocock trying to build up his speed. He'll then carry that wide again here. He's been running that line throughout this race so far, and he's going to use it to good effect here. Again, he gains ground on Frank Van Homet, who cuts across the front of him and holds the inside line. Pocock, through the twisty stuff, is going to go back up to the outside, again trying to build up his momentum. He's certainly got plenty of speed, but can he carry it down towards the back straight on this FatCat Moto Park circuit? Or will it be Frank Van Homet who can continue to defend? Pocock going to the outside as they come past a lapped runner, and Van Homet holding the inside, forcing Pocock to run the longer way around the bends and try to build up his speed. It's Van Homet who's doing a great job of defending at the moment, and Bradley Pocock who's having to work overtime in second position. The close battle for third place still being headed at the moment by Blaine Blackwell ahead of Sebastian Kergar, and this hasn't quite gone to plan for the Dane, who finished runner-up to Frank Van Homet and had a similar pace to the first moto's winner, who now sits down in fourth position and set to drop further back in the point standings at the expense of Frank van Homert. Bradley Pocock still right on his tail though, with an opportunity to gain in some ground for himself. 16 points in the opening race of the day here in Doncaster, of course, after finishing down in 5th position, recovering from the back of the field. He again didn't make the start here, but this time there was no fall and no error so far from Bradley Pocock, who this time looks to the outside line, coming back around, and Frank van Homert defends on the pit turn, but it's Bradley Pocock who comes through down the inside to take the race lead. Stunning effort from Bradley Pocock. He pursued his man for 2 laps. Van Homert will come back at him around the outside line. He's now switched onto the attacking line that was favoured by Pocock early on, but Pocock moves up to it once again, and Van Homert has to settle in. Line of stern now for the top 2 positions. Bradley Pocock leading the way. Frank van Homert's in 2nd position, and 3rd and 4th to Blaine Blackwell and Sebastian Kergar, who've dropped some way now away from this top 2 battle. So Bradley Pocock, who stormed from the back to 5th position in the opening moto, has now worked his way through from 5th to 1st in the 2nd, and is set to make up 3 championship points. Remember, championship points being scored in every race during the season and accumulated across the various rounds in the 2017 campaign. It's Bradley Pocock then who sits on in front ahead of Frank van Homert. He's got a lot of ground to make in, of course, after conceding 9 points to the Dutchman in the opening moto of this round number 1. But Bradley Pocock set to make up 3 here, and well, if he wants to take overall victory here at round 1, he's going to have to hope for further errors from Frank van Homert later in the day. But for the moment, the focus on this 2nd moto, and it's Bradley Pocock who leads, and by a fairly commanding margin now, barring any errors. It looks as though Bradley Pocock will become the 2nd different winner of this 2017 season in the 2nd race of this round number 1. It's Frank van Homert who still sits in 2nd place, and the others dropping back behind. 3rd position still held by Blaine Blackwell, but it's been a struggle for Sebastian Kergar, who has dropped now behind both Dominic Foreman and Jody Burton, so there must have been an error somewhere around the circuit from Sebastian Kergar, who has dropped out of contention for a podium position in this 2nd moto, and that's also going to cost him in the championship race overall. Here it is again from Bradley Pocock, looking to the inside on Frank van Homert. By the time the Dutchman realises he's alongside, it's already too late to try to defend to the inside. Pocock has the inner ground and covers the position from there. And it's Bradley Pocock who still leads us into the closing stages now, ahead of Frank van Homert. And as I said, Pocock scoring 16 points first time out for 5th position. Frank van Homert the winner. Sebastian Kergar and Blaine Blackwell finishing behind him in that opening moto. And, well, neither are going to feature in the top 2 positions here. Blackwell down in 3rd as things stand, behind Pocock, of course, recovering, and Kergar down the order. So an opportunity for Bradley Pocock to fire himself back up the standings as they come now into the final lap, with Bradley Pocock working his way through traffic. Frank van Homert well back in 2nd position, just consolidating that place, doing what he needs to do to bring that home, and consistency through the season will be crucial, as I was saying previously, with the points being added up throughout the day to decide the round 1 winner, and then across the season to decide the champion. It's Frank van Homert who's been the man to find consistency and to bring the titles home, but it's Bradley Pocock, the challenger, who looks set to win this 2nd moto and make back some of that lost ground. Van Homert led it by 3 over Kergar. The Dane, though, is going to drop back. He's still trying to recover from down the order in 6th position, actually battling back in the closing stages to 5th place, so that's not going to be the ideal result for him. It'll match what Pocock did first time out, and he's going to drop 3 points in arrears of Pocock at the end of this race, unless things change up front, which certainly doesn't look likely to be the case, with Bradley Pocock stretching his advantage over Frank van Homert in 2nd place. Still Blaine Blackwell in 3rd. It was a fast start from Blackwell, but he subsequently dropped back. Still consistency from him. This is going to keep him right in contention for the title as well. We're only at the opening round of the season, so there's still plenty of mileage in this 2017 campaign. But it's the favourites from last year who look set to challenge once again. It's Frank van Homert who won the first moto, and it's going to be Bradley Pocock who will come home to win the 2nd. And it'll be honours even in terms of victories, but it'll be Frank van Homert who has the championship lead still in his hands after taking the first moto. Around the final turn then, to take the checkered flag, it's Bradley Pocock who becomes the 2nd different winner in the 2017 season. But Frank van Homert comes over the line in 2nd, and that's enough to secure his position in the championship as the leader after 2 completed races this season. Third home will be Blaine Blackwell, and the rest filtering their way through. It'll be fourth position behind him for Dominic Foreman. Foreman, who sat fifth at the end of the opening lap, has worked his way back through, of course, after misfortune for Sebastian Kjærgaard. Kjærgaard then the Dane, finishing in the end in fifth position, having recovered that place from Jody Burton, who comes home in sixth position. So it's Van Homet who maintains that championship lead. It's Bradley Pocock who becomes the second different winner in the first two motos of 2017. Here we go then for the third and deciding moto, with 5 riders in contention for overall victory at round 1 of the 2017 campaign. Pocock's best start of the day. Kjærgaard and Van Homet with him, the reigning champion leading on the inside into the first turn, but down he goes. Frank Van Homet down. Fast starter Blaine Blackwell seizes the advantage ahead of Sebastian Kjærgaard. The two almost level as they come into the top turn and back towards the back end of the circuit. Kjærgaard looking to the outside, Blackwell holding the inside. It's Blackwell leading the way from Sebastian Kjærgaard in second, Bradley Pocock in third, Dominic Foreman in fourth position, Pat Crump fighting Jody Burton over sixth position. As further down the order, Frank Van Homet starts to recover places. He's picked off Joe Banks there. He's going to try and gain another couple of positions on the inside, but just in the space of 2 bends there, Frank Van Homet has had to make the pass on 2 riders who'd fallen, and that really is the major challenge of coming through from the back of the field. The traffic really that's significantly slower than a top-line performer such as Frank Van Homet, who is already battling his way back, and a stronger start to his recovery than certainly Bradley Pocock suffered in the first moto. And Frank Van Homet, it may only be a matter of time before he gets onto the tail of the big 4 that are out in front at the moment. Bradley Pocock homing in on the 2 leaders. It's Blaine Blackwell out in front. Pocock cutting through to pass Kjærgaard for second. Behind Blackwell now, who is the race leader, but under siege from the number 57, Bradley Pocock, looking up to the outside line. Once again, a cloud of dust billowing behind him as he comes firing past Blaine Blackwell to take the lead. And it's Bradley Pocock who sits in top spot, just as he did in the second moto. He's come through for the race lead, but this time right in the early stage of the race. And it's Bradley Pocock who looks set for a second consecutive race win. Meanwhile, further down the order, Frank Van Homet already back up into the top 10, albeit over 10 seconds behind the leader now. Bradley Pocock out in front, and, well, he has 6 points to make up, does Bradley Pocock, on Frank Van Homet as Pocock goes down. Pocock, the race leader, falls, and, well, it's more frustration and more disappointment for him as Frank Van Homet in the background there passes Andrew Luke for 8th position. So Frank Van Homet with an opportunity to gain right back in on and possibly pass Bradley Pocock here as he sits stranded at the side of the circuit, and we'll see where Pocock will rejoin. I make that down in 11th position, so behind his title rival Frank Van Homet, who is going to be one of the riders to benefit from Pocock's third fall of the day here at round 1 of this 2017 campaign. What a dramatic start it's been to this season for Bradley Pocock, then Frank Van Homet falling in the early stages of this third moto, Pocock joining him and ending up behind him on the track once again, and that's a bit of a get out of jail free card for Frank Van Homet, but it does mean also that this race lead in the third moto could also potentially decide the overall winner here today, because Blackwell, Kjærgaard and Foreman all came into this third moto level on points on 38 apiece, and Frank Van Homet and Bradley Pocock out in the minor positions at the moment are not set to score the same volume of points as the leaders, as Kjærgaard challenges on the inside now of Blaine Blackwell and tries to take the position away, but Blackwell holding on well. Meanwhile, while these two try and swap and change positions, it's Dominic Foreman who sits in third place. He's been gapped a little bit. In fact, he has dropped back in the early stages from 4th position behind the front trio that were dicing over places. But while Blackwell seems to be holding Kjærgaard back a little bit, that could present an opportunity for Dominic Foreman. And the 3 riders who came into this race third and equal third with 38 points apiece are now the top 3 in this race, and the two riders who sat above them in the standings are further down the order. The championship standings are going to look very tight indeed after this round number 1, unless there are some serious changes in the remainder of this third moto. It's certainly been set up very nicely right on the opening couple of laps, with Bradley Pocock and Frank van Homet trying to work their way through the field from further down the order. And we have a separate race up front between Blaine Blackwell, the current race leader, and Sebastian Kergar in second position, and this could potentially be for the overall victory here in Doncaster at round 1 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship. It's still Blaine Blackwell leading the way then. Sebastian Kergar has had a couple of nibbles, but not quite being able to get alongside. As we see further back, that's Bradley Pocock. So where has he managed to filter his way up to on the number 57 bike? Bradley Pocock, well, he was on the fringes of the top 6 last time around, so Pocock working his way through the field quite nicely. And he's got plenty of experience of recovering through traffic, of course, Bradley Pocock, having come from the back of the field to 5th in the first moto of the season. Here he is in Moto 3 at round 1 here in Doncaster, and he's down outside the top 5 at the moment, but certainly capable of finding his way back through. Not sure where Frank van Homet is. It's difficult to tell what position the riders in the lower order are finding their way through to. It's the top 3 who have made the break, and at present it's Blaine Blackwell out in front ahead of Sebastian Kergar in second position. It appears that Frank van Homet has recovered up to P4, and that will put right behind him now as Sebastian Kergar passes Blaine Blackwell for the lead unexpectedly, and from a distance back Kergar has finally managed to make the move. Blackwell a little bit slower than he wanted to be on the outside run, and Kergar makes the block pass. So Sebastian Kergar of Denmark out in front now in the net lead of the event here, and a potential championship leader if he can stay out in front and keep the attacks away from him further back down the order. It's Blaine Blackwell who's been relegated then to P2. Third position still with Dominic Foreman, and well, then further back you've got to look a fair way now before you get to Frank van Homet, who was a challenger, potential challenger, and certainly championship leader. There is Bradley Pocock back up to that 5th position. That's a very impressive resurgence, finding his way ahead once again of Frank van Homet. Here was the position change with Sebastian Kergar getting up the inside of Blaine Blackwell. Blackwell had the momentum, but he'd been blocked out well and truly by Kergar there, who then gets across the front of him into the left-hander, and there's no way for Blackwell to get back through, nowhere for him to go, and he has to back out of it. And now that he's lost that position, he has been well and truly dropped by Sebastian Kergar, who has the pace advantage out in front. Dominic Foreman in 3rd position. There he is working his way through the infield section behind Blaine Blackwell, and starting to gain in some ground now. Frank van Homet from 4th position. So it could be a potential option for Van Homet to get back into the top 3 finishers here, and as things stand, this could be good enough for him to maintain that championship lead. He did have the advantage of 9 points, of course, coming into this event, and as we know, 5th position is worth 16 championship points, which would mean that if Blackwell, Kergar or Foreman do take the checkered flag, they would only pull themselves level with Van Homet, who, if he finished in 5th position, if he does finish in 4th, he will maintain that championship lead. So this should be good enough for Frank van Homet, unless Bradley Pocock can find his way into the top positions, or unless he ends up dropping further down the field. And you wouldn't put more surprises past this event here in Doncaster. We've had some real drama. We had Bradley Pocock falling from the lead. We'd already lost the championship leader on the opening lap. In fact, on the opening turn, Frank van Homet going down. Both have got up to their feet. Both are running now well and truly inside the top 10, in fact inside the top 5, but it doesn't look as though they're going to get to the race leaders, and the battle at the moment is developing over 2nd position between Blaine Blackwell, who holds P2, and right tucked in behind him now Dominic Foreman, who's at 4th position. Of course, he gained a place at the expense of that fall for Bradley Pocock on lap number 2, and Pocock then working his way back through the field and up into P5, but he is gaining further ground now on 4th position, Frank van Homet, so he could be in for a pretty lively affair in the latter stages. Pocock gaining ground on Van Homet, Van Homet gaining on the top 3, and all of them set to end up in a pack together by the end of the race. In fact, Frank van Homet has just appeared in camera shot for the first time, alongside, or just behind I should say, Dominic Foreman. So it's Foreman there battling for the 3rd position in this race, and Van Homet, who's now tucked up right behind him, and Bradley Pocock coming for the trio as the race leader pulls well clear out in front. Well, Blaine Blackwell then holding that second position after being overhauled by Sebastian Kjærgaard, but you can see that the top three are pretty close together now, with the number one of Frank van Homet being encouraged on as he gains ground on those top three positions. So the riders have slotted themselves into position for a final assault. The protagonists are the same five who've dominated this event all weekend. Current race leader Sebastian Kjærgaard, he sits up front and well clear ahead of Blaine Blackwell in second position. Dominic Foreman in third, just running up to the outside line, almost wider than he wanted actually, under pressure still from Frank van Homet, who's gradually gained in ground and now sits in fourth position and within striking distance of P2 coming into the final lap. Fourth place would already be enough for him to maintain that championship lead, but he has more points in his sights, and right ahead of him now, Dominic Foreman starting to drop back a little bit from Blaine Blackwell as they come through traffic. Blackwell, the first of this group to encounter the lap runners, as around the outside once again goes Foreman, but this time around Frank van Homet not quite close enough to strike. He'll look for another opportunity. He'll try to make an opportunity by firing up to the outside line. Let's see how deep he can go and how fast into this one of the slowest turns on this circuit. Frank van Homet challenging on the inside of Dominic Foreman. He's got it turned nice and early. Back up the inside, he pulls alongside and past. He gets the better of Foreman, who immediately starts to drop back. And now it looks like a two-horse race over second, with Blaine Blackwell just up ahead of Frank van Homet, and it's van Homet who clearly has the closing speed. He's come right through from the lower reaches of the field after a first bend fall, and what an impressive recovery it's been. But has he still got time to get up into second place? He wasn't quite close enough through that infield section. Now he's got to try and do it down the back straight, and time will swiftly run out here for Frank van Homet, who is tucked up right behind Blaine Blackwell. Blackwell needs to move to defend. He can afford to go defensive. We're into the latter stages now of this final lap, as Frank van Homet, the reigning champion, chases on the tail of Blaine Blackwell. He's within just over a bike length now. He looks for the move in the final two hairpins, and down he goes. Frank van Homet falling on the penultimate hairpin, and that's going to give second position to Blaine Blackwell. And how about his other championship rivals? Well, Dominic Foreman seems to have dropped back, and it's going to be Bradley Pocock. Bradley Pocock comes out of the final turn. He's going to move himself up into third position, and a major surprise in the latter stages. Where did Pocock come from to come through from fifth position? Dominic Foreman has lost out in all of that as well, so I didn't see what happened to him, but he will come over the line in fifth position after sitting up in third at one step, or a potential third position, certainly after the fall of Frank van Homet, and he did hold that third position going into the final lap. Van Homet looked set to make a second pass on the tail of Blaine Blackwell there when the move was clamped down, and down went Van Homet. And although he does maintain his championship lead, it could have been so many more points than that, and it could have been an even bigger advantage over Bradley Pocock. Van Homet comes over the line then in fourth position, but it is going to be a round one victory for the Dutchman, and a third Moto fourth position finish behind Bradley Pocock in third, Blaine Blackwell in second, and Sebastian Kjærgaard the race winner.